Mal, thanks so much for joining me. Welcome to the podcast. Cheers. We're drinking Aperol Spritzers that have been made by my beautiful wife, Annie.
Yeah.
And I'm here chatting to you about the year that you've had. And we're also catching up for a long time. I've known you since, I don't know, probably 2003, 2004.
Yes.
So tell me about the year that you've had. You're a registered nurse, you're a yoga teacher, and there's one aspect of your biography which I'd like you to tell the story of.
Oh, right. This year, at the start of the year, in February, I was diagnosed with lymphoma, a subtype of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma called primary mediastinal large B-cell lymphoma, or abbreviated to PMBCL. So it's a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but it only affects 2 to 6% of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Okay.
So that was at the start of the year. I got really sick, and I think the symptoms of what I got was very nondescript.
Yep.
Of like dry persistent cough, and I didn't think anything of it because my partner and I were overseas for Christmas in England, so I thought I caught the flu.
Sure.
And I thought, oh God, this is taking forever. This cough is it's driving me nuts. Didn't think anything of it. I thought it was viral. Like, what's the point of going to see a doctor? And then we came home and I was still coughing, and the coughing went on for about a month in Jan, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm starting to I'm coughing so much, but my neck veins are showing up now. So I was like, oh God, must be coughing so much that my neck veins are showing, as if I've been lifting weights, straining. And then the neck veins didn't go down. Then the face swelling started, and the face swelling got better as I was upright throughout the day. So it'd be absolute worst in the morning, and then it'll subside during the day, and then it'll get bad when I wake up in the morning again. So, and it got progressively worse. So by the time February kicked in, I was doing my yoga teacher training at that time, and I just realizing that my body, I wasn't able to do certain things, like a simple down dog was really hard because I was inverted and the blood flow is just going straight to the head. And I just got this head fullness, and it just felt like I was going to pass out all the time. And then it came to a point where I couldn't lie flat in bed for days until I was diagnosed, and then it just got progressively worse. So I think near the end I was propped up on 3 pillows at home just to fall asleep, because it found it hard to breathe, because it was just I felt like as if I had a tourniquet around my neck. Yeah, so it's just and at first I thought it was my allergies, because I'm allergic to peanut and hazelnut and crab, and I was like, but I haven't had this. I haven't had any of them. I've been really good and being completely avoiding those 2 things. Crab as well. And I was like, oh, what's going on? And then I remember I was in yoga teacher training, and the day before it got really bad, I couldn't even lie down in what we call shavasana and it was just the start of the practice. It was a very easy practice in the morning, and it's called yin yoga. So we just we start lying down, and I couldn't lie down because the headache was so bad, and just felt like my brain's gonna pop, and I was just in tears. And I was like, something's wrong. This is not me. Because I was so fit and healthy. I've been eating well. I treated my body with respect, as that I worked out, ate well, try to sleep as much as you can. All those things that we want to do, that all we know that to do for our body. Yeah. So the following day, I remember I was getting up ready to go for yoga teacher training. It was a Saturday, and my partner just looked at me because he was going to work, And he's like, please go see a doctor. You're not well. And I go, okay, I will. I just need to get through this because I paid $3,000, 3,000 plus. And I really just want to get this done. Okay, yeah. And I've got a day off. I'll take the day off tomorrow and I'll go get it checked out. But like, I'll get it checked out today. I just want to go and get this done. So yeah, I remember just feeling really lightheaded going to the yoga practice, and I was like, I can actually just, if I'm present, it'd be fine. I don't need to do the actual practice. And anyway, so we started it. I was sitting down talking to one of my friends there, and then at the start of the class, it's like, okay, stand up to the top of your mats, and I just fell straight back and fainted. I remember hearing bees, like everyone's voices were turning to humming bees. And then the next thing I knew, I woke up with all my friends looking at me and like, "Mal, lie down, you're blue." And I was just kind of like, what just happened? I don't faint. This is not me. And I couldn't lie flat for too long because the pressure to my head was getting worse again. And then so I sat up and just waited for the practice to finish. Everyone's like, "Mal, please go get checked out. Don't worry about this course. Who cares? You know what I mean? Your health is more important." So made my way to the hospital. I thought nothing of it. So I was thinking, oh, I must be dehydrated. I just drank water. So I caught the train home. I wish I should, in hindsight, I should have called the ambulance. But I was like, it's like the ignorance is bliss kind of thing. Caught the train home, and I spoke to my brother on the way there because I just needed someone to talk to as I'm walking to the hospital that I work at RPA. And obviously freaking out. And it's like, hey, I was saying to my brother, like, oh, look, I just fainted. And, I'm going to the hospital. I'm getting checked out, but I'm really quite concerned because this doesn't happen. And he's like, yeah, like my brother's like, you sound really scared. And I go, yep, can you just stay on the phone and just talk about stuff? Go in there, and then I went in, and I just, when as a nurse yourself, as a nurse, I start diagnosing, and just all those sort of things like, okay, haven't had nuts, and just eliminating all those variables. And I remember being renal trained, dealing with people with dialysis and having vas caths and whatnot that have a vas cath that sometimes blocks the superior vena cava. That is one of the major veins that drains the blood from their head. Right. And when they have, sometimes when that vas cath, that catheter blocks the vessel, you can have those kind of symptoms of head fullness, your veins popping up, all those sort of things.
So you were doing triage on yourself?
Yeah. So as I'm walking down, we're talking to my brother. I was going through that, and I explained that when I saw the doctor, and I go like, I really feel something's wrong, and I told him, I think something's blocking my superior vena cava because I've seen it in renal patients who have a vas cath and don't have a vas cath, so I think something's really sinister. But I'm happy for you to prove me wrong, and that I'm a pedantic nurse and it's viral, and go home and just rest up. Sure. So he's like, he goes, okay, sure. He listened to me. He was so good. He listened to me. He's doing all these tests. Like, I'm gonna lie you flat and listen to your heart. He lied me flat, and I started coughing because like I was just getting all these symptoms, headaches coming back. He's like, oh, you're coughing. And I go, yeah, like it happens when I lie down. Then he sat me back up and he goes, put your arms above your head. And I was like, okay, I'm getting lightheaded again, getting that pressure. He goes, okay, I'm going to send you for an x-ray. We'd do some bloods. So the chest x-ray, went for it. It was really quite hard to hold my breath, and they were getting all those sort of things. And I was like, okay. So he pulled me into the room, probably a good, what it felt like a few minutes to me, but it's probably about like an hour or so later, sitting down, getting monitored within the emergency department. And he pulled me aside and he goes, okay, this is your x-ray that I took when I met your wife. We all started, back then they took a baseline x-ray in case you get exposed.
So that's an x-ray that they do inside the Royal Prince Alfred Hospital if you work there.
Yeah.
So they do health checks on all the employees.
Yeah, yeah.
So my wife Annie, who's a nurse, and that's how, we know each other.
Yeah.
So when you both started, which would have been about the same time.
2003?
2003, 2004, something. 2003 probably, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's when, so they're comparing that initial x-ray from your first days as a nurse.
Yeah.
As a trainee nurse.
Yeah.
And that's what they're comparing this new one to.
Yeah. So it was, so he goes, this is the baseline x-ray from 2003. And this is the x-ray we just took moments ago. And I lost it because it was ginormous. The mass was so evident.
Yep.
So it's in the mediastinum, which is the center of my my chest, and just behind the chest wall, behind the sternum. And it's the size of it was 10 by 10 by 10. And how the doctor goes in.
That's 10 centimeters, is it?
10 centimeters,
That's
yeah.
okay.
So two fistfuls.
Wow.
Pressing on top of the heart and pressing on the esophagus. So I found that's why I find it hard to breathe. I wasn't getting the blood drainage from the head, but it also explains why, as I'm upright, it helps assist the blood drainage back down to the heart. So anything after that, like anything like that, like lying flat, will just increase the pressure. So that's
that's the story of finding out.
Finding out.
And how does that moment hit you when you see? I mean, you're medically trained.
Yeah.
So when you were triaging yourself, I assume that you didn't consider. Was it on the list of things that you potentially were considering in your head as you were walking to the hospital?
Yeah, I was thinking like there's something sinister. Sure. And what I mean by that, it was kind of like there's something.
Yeah.
Mass-wise,
yeah, sure,
cancer-wise.
Because you would have thought about the previous months as well and how your health has been affected.
Yeah.
And so do you think that the fact that you were having these coughing and so on, and because you're otherwise so fit and healthy, do you think that contributed to you not, and because obviously you're a nurse as well, and there's a famous thing in the health workers are terrible patients. Doctors are not good patients.
Yeah.
Nurses aren't good patients. And particularly people who are healthy as well, you're like, well, I don't get sick, so I'm sure this might just be a passing thing. And so do you think that all contributed to the, well, I won't go and I don't need to go to a doctor. It's a passing thing. And then that it all accumulated. So it's a powerful story. And so the realization, I'm sure, how does that feel to kind of have that confirmation visually that you're so sick and that you've got this condition now?
So that was, I would say that it will put it like it just throws the world upside down. You're almost going to a parallel universe. Like you're in the world with everybody else, but you're completely out of it. Yeah. You're trying to make sense of all. I felt like I was having psychosis. So I was like, now my colleagues are treating me. I'm not in scrubs. I'm now a patient.
Yeah.
And that is what was so hard for me to kind of comprehend straight up when I was told that. And then so the one thing that I wanted was information. I was like, I don't know anything about this. I've done shifts in wards with in treating cancer patients, and the immediate thing that came to my mind is that nothing ends well with cancer. But then it was also because I see the worst. As a nurse, you see the worst of the worst. I didn't think of the ones who get treated and go home. Yeah. The ones who make it out and potentially never have it come back as well. So I was thinking doom and gloom. I was thinking, my vital organs are like really compromised right now. And my main thing was how do I get that message to my partner?
Wow.
Because my partner works on the long distance country New South Wales trains, and as we know, it gets quite sketchy when you go into the country with reception and stuff. And at the same time, how do I break that news? to him and my other loved ones, my family. That was really hard. And it was the day after my brother's birthday who I was talking to on the phone as well. So I was like, oh, how am I going to do this?
And so what was that process like?
It was
finding out ways, and did you decide on a method of communication or have a plan?
I was very,
how did you go about it?
Yeah, I was very lucky that I had the nurses there took charge of that. And I go, I don't know what to do. I feel like it's a bad dream. I'm like, okay, first, here's a phone. Call somebody. And then get them to call the next. And then start that ball rolling. You need support. Get your loved ones in. And they took me to one of the isolation rooms to make that, because I was completely like just in tears. I was just like mortified. I was like just like absolutely shaking, also struggling to breathe from the symptoms of the lymphoma as well, pressing on my my heart and my lungs. So got my brother to come in. I was very lucky that as the news was breaking out, my friends from yoga came.
Wow.
And I just met them for like 3 weeks before that. They came, they sat by me, and they're like, we're here with you. And then by that time I had the x-ray ready, and then I just had the CT scan. And the doctor was saying, okay, it's massive, but this treatable. It's most likely lymphoma. You're going to be admitted under hematology, and this is your consultant. And what treatment may look like is chemotherapy and radiation. And I was like, okay, fine. He's like, don't lose hope. You're young, you're healthy. You're more equipped to deal with chemo and the treatment that comes with it, with cancer. And I was like, okay. And I'm just like losing it still. So my brother came in and straight away told him, and I was like, okay, we need to get the family on board. I don't want any secrets. Because like at that time I didn't know how much time I had. I was so symptomatic, and just struggling to breathe, struggling to sleep, all those sort of things, before that day. And once I find out, I had no more defenses. I didn't have that ignorance is bliss anymore. I didn't have anything to kind of, it's a viral, and just soldier on with your adrenaline and all that sort of stuff.
I'm doing a yoga course.
I'm no longer doing the yoga course. I don't need to be strong anymore because I got cancer. And
so the battle begins, I suppose. Now you've like crested the hill, and you've seen the shape of this enemy, I suppose. It's and then what's the next step? You said you wanted information and treatment, and it sounds like the treatment started to begin immediately.
So 5 days later I started the chemo. Because it was on the weekend, I had to wait until anything's done. So I was like, so it's a matter, they didn't want to give me steroids, which like to shrink the mass, because steroids, that's what steroids do. Because they don't want to give me steroids straight away because it would mask the results of a biopsy. So I was like, okay, fine, let's just give me paracetamol, some strong painkillers, whatever. And I didn't need the strong painkillers. That made me more sick. I just felt really nauseous and dizzy, which I didn't need. I was already feeling that. So I was just kind of staying put with symptom management. By then, my partner came on the following day, returned home from Grafton. So my partner knew about it. He relinquished his duties. He's like, I can't work anymore. And I think that was the most distressing thing, not having the one that you care about there, and also putting that, also having that stress on them as well. And that was the most, and you're both worrying to and fro about each other, because essentially, I'm his tether to Australia. Like he travelled. We met when we were travelling. When he was travelling here, and he's now an Australian citizen. Oops, there we go. So I was just kind of like, oh, I'm so worried. And I like immediately in my head, it's like, I got so many things I want to say, or so many things I want to do, and I don't know if this is going to work out. And you know, I think everyone feels that way when they go through treatment, or when they get a diagnosis as such, because you just don't know.
Yeah, the uncertainty.
Yeah.
You know, you're just one day, you know, you think you've got a bit of a cough, and the future is laid out in front of you as you imagine it.
Yeah.
And then I can imagine, you know, suddenly you're confronted with life and death and all of that entails. And I imagine that changes your thinking about the future.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, irrevocably. You can't. I'm sure what you had imagined, you know, is no longer possible in that form, and you have this great uncertainty about about what you're confronting and how it's going to end up. So that's the next thing that you have to deal with. You're dealing with the emotional, existential fear, as well 100%. As dealing with your friends and family and loved ones, and you're both. It seems like what I'm hearing is you're concerned about your own being, and then also how your needs are going to affect those around you, particularly if your partner has to quit their job. You know? So how did you go about dealing with that? What was the strategy and what happened?
The strategy was, again, just kind of like just asking for advice. And I'm like, I've never gone through this before. What do I need to do next? So it was just, I was just reaching out for whatever I could. Tell me what I need to do. Or like, okay, what does that test mean? Okay, so what are the pros and cons? And how can my partner go about this? What am I meant to do with that information? Those kind of questions I constantly asked, and I was like, okay, you know, that's how I just went through it, because it was very hard to switch off that nursing brain as well, sure. That the way of thinking. Then and as a test rolled in, so I had my biopsy on the Monday. Then the following day I had my PET scan. And
what's a PET scan?
Oh, so a PET scan's a CT scan they give you a radioactive dye.
Okay.
Which that's full of sugar. So you're fasting. And so that gets because cancer cells, they love sugar, because they want to grow. They're aggressive. So they take up that radioactive dye. Yeah. And then as you're in the scan, it lights up.
Okay.
And that's how it shows where it is. So a lot was ranked. Like I was like, okay, wow, this is happening. You can't move. Once they injected that, you need to wait for a few, I think it was about half an hour or 40 minutes or so. I can't remember. And I had a few of them now. Still can't remember that. It just feels like forever waiting in this room. And then you go through the scan, and then they give you results, and then that tells you where it is, if there's any more masses anywhere. So once I got the results, I was like, okay, great. It's stage 2. In lymphoma, it goes up from stage 1 to 4. So stage 2 being that it's because they cut the body in quadrants, so it was nothing below the diaphragm, thankfully. So in a way, I was quite lucky that it was in so close around the vital organs that it gave me all those symptoms, because I caught it so early in that respect. And because it's in both sides of my chest, that's the stage 2.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the following day I had my gated heart pulse scan, because by the Monday they started giving me, after I had the biopsy, they gave me steroids, so I started feeling better. It started shrinking a little bit. But by the Wednesday, the steroids didn't work anymore. It was very high dose steroids. It was a lot. It didn't work anymore because I just blew up like a balloon. The left arm blew up. Because the lymphoma was pressing on my veins, so I started getting clots deep vein thrombosis throughout my left arm.
Wow.
So it looks, it looked almost similar to my calf.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like your right arm's been on a long flight.
Yeah, yeah. And I haven't
and
moved it.
without moving, yeah.
Oh, man.
So it feels like it sounds like you're going through like purgatory, like you're in this like realm of uncertainty and, you know, pain, misery, and difficulty. And then you start, and soon after this is when you start chemo.
Yeah, so when I had that gated heart pulse scan, it was just to measure what their heart health is like before they start chemo. And the moment I had that happen, I had really great a great team of people looking after me. And they said, okay, the registrar, she kept calling down and I go, what are the results? Okay, and then she ran feels like she ran in. Because everything feels like it was just. She came in the moment, like it felt like minutes after I came back, and she goes, "Okay, we don't know the full results of the biopsy, but we know enough that it's a lymphoma, that it's a B cell, and we're starting chemo, which you consent." And I go, "Yes, let's do it." And I was like, called my partner and like, "Okay, you need to come in. We're starting chemo." And so that's how it began. Day 5, like 5 days after being admitted. That was the...
Man, that's such a crazy timeline to think that 5 days previously, you know, you just thought you had a cough and a cold and a bit of,
Yeah.
Wow. And so what's chemo like?
Oh.
It doesn't seem fun.
Yeah, like I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was terrible. It affects people differently, so I don't want to discredit what the symptoms that people did or did not feel. Yep. But I can only speak from my experience. The nausea was hell for me. I'm not one to that deals with like seasickness and all that sort of stuff. I'm one, like, I get that really easily. So I think when it came to chemo, I was like, that was times 50 for me. So I felt nauseous all the time. Then the metallic taste comes in. It changes the taste that you have. It constipates you, and it changes the way you smell, like what you smell. So certain smells drive me nuts, and like certain colognes, anything really strong smelling, just gave me nausea.
Wow.
Yeah, like fabric softener, I smelled that from a mile away.
Wow.
I have to ask my partner, not, please don't wear any more cologne. Like, you don't need it, and you surely don't stink. So please don't wear it. It's making me nauseous.
It's funny because it would change your subjective experience so much. Because I mean, I have no experience personally. Fortunately, my family members who were affected by cancer were when I was very, very young and far too young to remember or really empathise. You know, when I was 6 years old.
Yeah.
I had some family members who were affected, but I mean, I read this book called The Emperor of All Maladies.
Okay.
Which is just terrifying. So it's a book about cancer.
Yeah.
It's about the history of cancer research and how they've improved cancer treatment over the years, and how that dates back from, you know, when it was just this mysterious thing that didn't have a name, and all the way to the development of chemo and beyond.
Yeah.
And it's confronting. It's a very difficult book to even read. And I experienced nothing of the symptoms, but it's beautifully written, and it really honours the accounts of people who go through these treatments. But, you know, reading the descriptions of what chemotherapy is designed to do by design, it's basically trying to break your body down to its, you know, the barest like survivable point, effectively. I mean, that's my understanding of what effectively gets done, is you get bombarded to kill almost everything.
Yeah.
And that's along with the cancer being targeted, there's a lot of collateral damage. And so, that seems like a very, very difficult thing to go through.
It's this, this sounds terrible. And I'm going to say it and to own it, but it is poison.
Yeah.
And that's what it does. Like it kills fast replicating cells, what cancer does. And that means that's when your hair falls out.
Yeah.
That's when your skin stops growing. My nails went black.
Wow.
It's just like one of the chemo drugs. It has a lot of tannin in it, so it just changes the color of your nails. It just goes brittle and black. Yeah, and that's just a few things of what it made me feel.
Well, look, I don't want to make you relive it.
Oh, no, it's absolutely fine.
But one thing I'm curious about, just as a sidebar, is one thing I've read, and with great interest, Annie and I attended a conference which was medical professionals for medical marijuana. This was maybe 2 years ago now. And one of the things that they were talking about was that, what you described was nausea. And did you have problems with appetite with chemo?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So I'm assuming, did you have any access to medicinal marijuanas?
No.
Not at all?
No.
That's
I wish we did.
Yeah, right. Would you have been open to trying it?
100%. Okay. 100%. Do you know, it's like when you exhausted all the antiemetics under the sun, and the steroids actually meant to increase your appetite. And I think there's an element where it does after you recover from your cycle of chemo. Yeah. But I felt it exacerbated all of that. And I wish I had something else that wasn't from all the antiemetics that I was taking. So I would have loved
something
that.
Perhaps that grows in the ground.
Yeah, something that grows in the ground.
And humans. Anyway, look, this is a personal bugbear of mine that we seem to be a long way behind the curve. At least, even if it's something that is offered and tried, if it works, it works. It might not.
Absolutely.
But anyway, it seems like a sensible conversation about that is a long way off in Australia, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So that's just a quick sidebar for my own personal attitudes.
It's a big yes for me.
And so you're now in this hellish period of chemo.
Yeah.
How long did that take?
Yeah, so I had 6 cycles of a protocol called RCHOP.
Okay. Does RCHOP have is that a sinister acronym? What does that stand for?
it's just the abbreviation for all the drugs that they give you for the chemo for the chemo regimen. So it has immunotherapy attached to it.
Okay.
So immunotherapy, I can't tell you when did it came out, but it's one of those newer things that come out with cancer treatments, which is so you got your chemo drugs, which is the CHOP side. So I had cyclophosphamide. I had
It's okay.
All those sort of things.
You don't need to remember the name.
But the immunotherapy side was, it's not chemo as such. It doesn't destroy the cells, but it actually helps the immune system. So it latches onto the cancer cells, so the immune system can recognize it as a cancer cell, so it can get rid of it.
Okay.
So I had that as part of, that was the R in front of the CHOP.
Okay.
And so I had immunotherapy with chemotherapy. So had 6 cycles of that. So that it was about 2 weeks in between.
And how long is the cycle?
Every 2 weeks. So
every 2 weeks. Okay.
Yeah. So sure. So it took just over 3-4 months.
Okay.
In total. And
so is it 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off? Is that the cycle, or how does?
I'm
just trying to understand.
Yeah. So I go in for the day. So I got my treatment in Lifehouse, in Chris O'Brien Lifehouse, which is just opposite the road from RPA where I work.
Mm-hmm.
So I had my first round of chemo, my first cycle of chemo in RPA, and I was looked after really well by my colleagues. They saved my life. I can't thank them enough.
Yeah.
And then I had the remaining treatment as an outpatient, and I went home. I'm a patient that went home.
That's amazing.
I recovered at home.
And that's incredible. And so, as the treatment's going along, how soon into the process did you know that it was on the right track and that it was working? And
so pretty within days actually.
Wow.
So you get the infusions, and that takes about like a working day. I go in at 8 o'clock, I get my bloods done, get the chemo, and then I'll be out by 4.
Yep.
It's like a working day. And then I go home and I just recover.
Sure.
And
that's the suffering period where you basically get a day of like poison.
Yes.
And you absorb all the poison, and then you go home, and then you basically it does its work.
Yeah, it does its work.
That's where you have to suffer through the purgatory, and then 2 weeks later you do it again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's. I'm just trying to get a picture of what it looks like. I
Mm,
mean, it's sounds, but I mean, this is the miracle of what we're dealing with. Like, you know, 100 years ago, it would just be, Mal, you passed out.
Yeah.
You know, we don't know what's wrong.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And so, how does that make you feel as like seeing? I'm assuming there's like lots of numbers involved, and like there's counts, and you see them going in the right direction.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Feel good. So, how's your, you know, were you doing all the same things that you were doing in your healthy lifestyle? Were you, you know, just what was your diet like? I assume it would be difficult because you're affected by your chemo.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what were you
So
trying to do, as well as obviously, I'm assuming if you were healthy before any of this struck, you would have just tried to maintain or even, you know, increase the level of your like, health consciousness. So
it's
like?
it was hard to keep in terms of physical side. So you know you're stuck in your bed, or you migrate from the bed to the couch, and that's some days. That's an achievement. But then there were some days where because the first week's really hard after chemo, like the days that lead up. So there were some days where I got a bit of energy, and I was like, okay, I'll go for a walk. Just gotta move, because you got that fatigue. But I was told by the nurses, my colleagues, so they're like, you feel fatigue, but that's when you need to kind of challenge your body and start moving it, and that's what's gonna help move the chemo through the body and excrete it. Yeah. And I'm like, great, okay. So at the moment I felt a little bit better, I went for a walk, or I tried to do something. And then you got like the sleep disturbances because of the steroids as well. They keep you up at night. So if I couldn't fall asleep, I just didn't. I just owned it, and then I just tried to do something else.
What were the kinds of things that you would try to occupy your time with?
Watching
Netflix, YouTube, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and like you can only watch it for a certain amount anyway. I watch a lot of cat videos. You know what I mean? Like it's
you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. Some people describe it as like a hangover, but like I think it's way worse than that.
Yeah.
So you know, you're not reading, you're not able to achieve big things.
Yeah, I can imagine, because when you're unwell, you can't. It's hard to enjoy even the most mindless of like distractions. You know, Dr. Phil or something which doesn't require a lot of mental energy to absorb.
Yeah.
If you're sick enough, is still not going to change how you feel, or it's not going to distract you enough. So, I can only imagine that, you know, if I compare some of my worst hangovers, I'm not even getting close, you know.
Yeah.
And you don't enjoy anything. You don't. Life is.
You watch cat videos.
Yeah, that's right. And so you've gone through this process, and everything's gone in the right direction. And then you're an outpatient, and you're going home, and you've got the tick, you've got the clean bill of health. And how does that feel, having gone from, you know, a couple of months before, you had no idea what was going, you know, you thought you had a cough.
And struggling to breathe.
And then 5 days later, you have lymphoma. And then 3 to 4 months later, you've gone through this hellish process, but you are done, and you feel like you've beaten it. I mean, it's an extraordinary story. And how does that feel?
It feels amazing now. I'm not gonna lie, it got really hard near the end. I was I was on struggle street. Like, it's hard to go back and do something 6 times that you know it's gonna make you sick. Right. Like, you know, like I think the perfect analogy for it that my partner gave was that, like, oh yeah, like if I drank a bottle of something like vodka and made me really, really sick, and then I'll wake up in the morning and then someone pours me a glass and go, drink it. Yeah. You would go and spew. Absolutely. And so I was getting that near the end. I started getting what's the word? It's like a preempting kind of nausea. Right. So I sat in the chair and I started feeling sick already, and I got the vomit bag and I was spewing. So to go through that and then ring the chemo bell, that was like, you know, I mean, I was like, oh my God, I finally did something I felt like I couldn't do. And that feels amazing. And then once that finished, we got the okay to go and just have a little quick trip, you know, just did something to celebrate.
Yeah.
So I was able to recuperate a little bit in Bali.
Beautiful.
I didn't really do much. I slept a lot, and I slowly watched my hair grow back, and it was like, you know, like toddler hair, like really fine. And I was like, oh, my eyebrows are coming back, my eyelashes are coming back. And when your eyelashes grow back, it's a really bizarre thing. It's kind of like itchy all the time, but I was like happy that it was coming back because I had nothing to filter all the dust.
Right. It's those little things.
It's little things.
You wouldn't think about. I don't think anyone thinks about their eyelashes, right? And it's, you don't know what you got till it's gone. The old Joni Mitchell thing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so then you've gone on to actually finish this yoga course that you had to that was rudely interrupted. And so how does that feel to be part of this community? Because I assume that on this path you met people who were on the same journey. And
yeah, dude.
What's that like?
Oh, it was incredibly beautiful, and almost serendipitous in a way. So I went after chemo. I had radio. So after I came back from Bali, I had radiation. So I had 15 fractions of that, with 15 sessions. So I went every single day for 3 weeks, with weekends off. And then I got the remission after a scan. And I said, yep, I'm coming back. I'm going to come back and finish training. And
sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, that's all right.
I just don't know what radiotherapy is. So is that what it is?
Yeah, radiotherapy, yeah.
And what's the difference between that and chemo? I'm just not sure.
So chemo you get poisoned, and radiation you get zapped.
Okay, what's the zapping?
The zapping's from so it's like almost having a big X-ray machine that comes and beams lasers into where the cancer is, and to break it up and change its DNA.
Wow. And
destroy what's left. So even though it was still there, so it was still still there, and they needed to like blast what's left in in my chest.
Okay, sorry to.
Oh, no, it's all right. No, it's all good. It's all good.
One of the things, having a wife that's a nurse, and I'm not sure if your partner experiences this too, but nurses have a lot of lingo, and they have a lot of specialized knowledge. Yeah. And you know, I'm not saying that I don't as a lawyer or whatever. There's words that we use that are impenetrable.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just whenever I'm having a conversation with her, I always say, "What does that actually mean?" I need to stop. So anyway, I apologize.
Oh no, thank you for keeping me in check with that as well.
No, it's not about that. It's just when you hear, right, you know, because you hear about these things, you hear chemo, and then people make assumptions. You know, like the broad cultural understanding of chemo is like, okay, it makes your hair fall out, and it's obviously very unpleasant to go through. And you see people in movies and they look sallow and sunken cheeks, and it looks like it wrecks your body, and that's basically it. So it's kind of, you know, and so if there's another thing, radiotherapy, it's like, oh, what's that? Is it like chemo? I don't know what that is, because I'm sure it's like entering, you know, when you said, it was really poignant what you said, it's like, you know, like your world like was frozen upside down, and it's like that feels like you do enter a completely new world, like where it's, as you said, a parallel universe where suddenly you are going to be thrust into this thing. And you know, if you've been in the community of people who are dealing with cancer, then everybody knows what chemo is and what it means. Everybody knows what radiotherapy is and what it means. And so translating that for the outside world is I guess a little bit unusual, and that's kind of I suppose that's what this whole convo is really about. Yeah. And it's really wonderful that I haven't heard this story before. This is really fantastic for me. It's because I haven't seen you in so long, and
it's been years.
And to hear this fresh is truly incredible. So thank you. So yes, just before I interrupted you, radiography, you were talking about how you got through that 3-week period, and then you've got the clean bill of health, basically.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like, now you're in remission, and I was like, okay, great. And you know, and the most common thing that doctors say, like, that's it, go out, enjoy your life. And I'm like, okay, how do I do that? Okay. I just been seeing, you know, when you get checked and you're being trained to be really diligent with looking after yourself and going through treatment and stuff like that, and you're like, okay, go enjoy your life, and I'm like, oh, okay, and I go, oh, okay, maybe I need to go and tie that loose end at the start of the year that I couldn't finish. So I was very lucky that they allowed me to come in, and there was a group of people that were about to start in August. So I jumped into that, and it was almost serendipitous that one of the other people in the group, because you go around the room and you introduce yourself, and she went like near the beginning, and I was like near the end of the circle, and she's got a different type of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Wow.
And she found yoga through cancer.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, because like I was, you know, when you like, I don't know if you ever feel like that when you're like, you have to introduce yourself, and you're like, oh, how am I gonna like do this? And like, this is not my first rodeo doing this training. But like she broke the wall, and I just had to walk through, and I was like, oh, well, thank you for sharing your story, because I am too, have cancer, and it's lymphoma as well, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and we were able to, with the support of everyone in the group as well, we're able to heal through yoga and move and really celebrate our life through movement, because we were able to kind of relate. They go, and on those days where we couldn't get out of bed, or when life is just it's just got you on your hands and knees, and you're just kind of like, what do I do? How am I gonna get through the next minute, to the next hour, to the next day? But then now we're doing this thing together, and it's incredible, and doing something that we love as well. Another thing that we love, and to finish that, to finish the training, it felt that I was able to close that chapter. I couldn't close at the beginning of the year, so that was almost for me just as important as finishing treatment.
Yeah. Wow.
It's like heaps of elation.
I can imagine how powerful that is, particularly hearing that someone found yoga through cancer, and it's like your experience was like fighting cancer through yoga. Like you were at the yoga thing when you found out you had cancer, basically. That's like you're talking about the serendipity, and like the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about is how does it feel when you are confronted with that fear that you might not make it, that when you run through your head all the fears that anyone would. Do you feel like do you have any spiritual beliefs? Or I'm so curious about how people and how individual people who go through anything, or even just ordinary people walking around, what they believe about facing death. And it's not often that we have to think about it.
True.
But there's like a real thing where when you have a diagnosis, which is like this thing like could kill you, and then you're left to contemplate that, because every human on the planet theoretically knows we're all going to die. Where that's the curse of consciousness for our species.
Yes. Oh, that's so worded beautifully. That is so worded beautifully.
But I'm not sure that, and people are, if you ask, nobody thinks they're immortal. No one would think that.
Yeah.
But it's so easy to not consider it. And so was on this path, what are your spiritual convictions? Have they changed? I'm curious. I'm very curious.
I would say I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. Such. I like, you go through the initial thing, like, I did not need this lesson. Universe, what are you doing? I knew my
chill out.
Like, hang on a sec. Like, I knew life was short. I'm a nurse. Come on. I know it changes in a moment. I don't need this lesson. I knew, like, I need to enjoy this life because it's finite. And I knew that in a way that I wanted to keep moving and being healthy until I can't move anymore. But then I was like, hang on, I'm in my 30s. Like, I don't need this lesson. Yeah. I'm a good person, I think. And all of those sort of things. And you kind of like, I'm going off on a tangent here. I don't really know.
No, the tangent was about like your spiritual life. There's no tangent. You're going straight to the core. Like, so I can imagine that the deep unfairness is something that would torture you and haunt you.
Yeah.
Like, why me? Like, these are the
why
things.
Why me?
And how what is it like to deal with that when you
contemplate your immortality?
Yeah, when you contemplate your immortality and like you, spiritual but not religious, definitely describes me. I like to say that I have a mongrel spirituality. I borrow bits.
Oh yeah.
So I have no problem with using the word God. It's profoundly mysterious, but I don't believe in the Christian God specifically. The imagery. I feel like everybody's secretly worshipping the same source of divinity. I could bang on about this. Talk about tangents. Forever. But when you don't have a particular tradition, I find it's hard for spirituality to find expression. And it's also hard to share the conviction that people of faith who come from a particular faith. So it's like if you're a Christian and you go to mass and you go to confession and you're like, I'm going to heaven with Jesus. It's like they have a really solid belief. And I assume it's the same for, religious Jews and Muslims. If it's like, if you're a good Muslim or a good Jew or you're a good Christian, then it's like you have a path and you believe in the salvation of your soul. And if you are a free-thinking spiritual person where you're like, well, it's probably some kind of thing that's bigger than us because the cosmos is mysterious, but 100%. I don't think that my spirit, or that my soul probably survives in a recognizable form. Like, I think there's all these ideas that kind of percolate. You're like, well, I probably I'm not gonna make it out of here. Like, my consciousness is not gonna be preserved somehow. This is my feeling. But pardon me, I had like a near-death experience when I was 22.
Yeah.
I got sideswiped by a coach, and I was fortunate. I walked out of this like wrecked car without a scratch at all. Nothing touched me. It was incredible, and I just remember the visceral feeling.
Yeah.
That, when you were saying I didn't need that lesson, I kind of needed that lesson because within a month I'd changed everything about my life. I'd quit a job and I decided, my life is, you don't get any second chances.
Yeah.
And this thing is finite. And if that was the end for me, that would have been a damn shame because there's lots of things that I would have done and there's lots of things that I would regret about how I'd been spending my time. Now I'm ranting.
Oh no! Oh my God! Please.
So how is it for you, knowing that you're facing this thing and being spiritual without religious and not kind of confronting the uncertainty? Is that
Yeah.
How does that feel?
It feels incredibly stressful.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think having a faith or anything like that would help.
Sure.
In my experience,
yep.
I automatically, upon all that stress, I straight away, like I said earlier, I didn't want any lies. I didn't want to hold any secrets around this. And I straight away went, okay, if this is it, I want my partner Russell to be looked after, and I want him to be well looked after, and I was like, and I don't want to suffer. That was my first thing I said to my brother when he came into the emergency room, and I go, hey John, if this is it, I don't want to suffer, and please make sure that everything goes and that Russell's looked after, that he's well looked after. That's all that matters for me, and I just don't want to suffer. So if it comes to it, let me go. And he was in tears, I was in tears. And I just said, like, I had a good life. And if this is it, that's fine. You know what I mean? And so I automatically went into that kind of mode. And in a way, you know, that is juxtaposed with this can't be it yet. Like I got fight left in me, so I'll do whatever it takes. I want for more time. So yeah, I had all these, like, it's like a whole rainbow of thoughts and
full spectrum of emotion.
Yeah.
Well, Mal, I think we're, you know, obviously there might be plenty more to say, but I think you've said plenty about your journey and about how you feel and where you've come. So I want to thank you deeply, truly, for being here and discussing with me. And I wish you all the best and congrats on your path and your remission and pursuing yoga. And we'll wrap it up there. I think I want to give you a hug, and then let's go and have some wonderful food with Annie.
Yeah.
Oh, you're a beautiful man.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're most welcome.
Thank you.
See you, good people. Bye.